Welcome back to our new show, Light on America. I'm Pat Mycone, president of the Republican Club of Laguna Woods, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Ro Kendall, our vice president of programs, and our guest speaker, special guest speaker, Linda Kelling, who you'll hear from in just a few moments. In our show last month, we let you know that our main goal for this show is to shed the light of truth on so many vital topics and issues of the day. We hope to educate, equip, engage, and have you become a more informed voter. We also promise to bring in guest speakers, experts who will be able to shed light on these topics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Ro Kendall.
Hello. It's my pleasure today to introduce our guest, Linda Kelling. She is a two-time former mayor of Foster City. Linda lives in Mission Viejo with her husband, and she is the first vice president of the Capo Valley Women's Federated, and here she is with us today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Ro. Thank you, Pat. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss something that's really very important to me. Local control, and we want to save this. Yes, I was a former mayor of the city of Foster City, which is up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I had the opportunity to participate and sit on various commissions and committees, such as the City and County Association of Governments, where I represented my community. I sat on the League of California Cities Committee, which had to do with public works and transportation. I began to see something that was beginning to evolve out of Sacramento, and that was we needed to be more regionalized. And that was a little bit worrisome. From that regionalizing, there came up local control power being taken away from local jurisdictions. And what I mean by that is, what I enjoyed about being on the city council was I got to be right there. The rubber met the road of governing. And I was right there with the constituents, my neighbors, my friends. I was helping serve what was needed in our city. Sacramento recently has started to take that control away from local jurisdictions, and it has had to do with all of this housing mandates. And I know I wanted to talk today about several topics. There is so much that needs to be talked about, such as what is local control? What does that mean to everybody? What are the impacts of these unfunded housing mandates on our communities? What is CEQA? What is RENA? What is builder's remedy? There are so many things that are linked to what is happening and the changes that we're experiencing around in our neighborhoods and communities. What are we doing about it? What can we do about it? And hopefully we can get that out today and maybe in another session.
As with so many of our issues and topics and purpose of our show, we want to bring the relevant topics that are nonpartisan. They affect all of us, so we're just so grateful to have you here today, Linda.
And when you say nonpartisan, Pat, I appreciate that, because there are many, many groups with many people from all throughout the entire state of California that are trying to do something to find solutions to help state officials come up with all of these. Where is this housing going to go? But the problem is, all of these bills that keep coming down and being mandated on our local communities is taking away our local control. So we have right now an organization called Our Neighborhood Voices, and this came out of Redondo Beach. And many people sit in on the Zoom calls with Our Neighborhood Voices, but Our Neighborhood Voices group is putting together an initiative that we hope will get on the ballot next year, which will begin to restore local control, local government control. Because locally, it's the voice of the people that should be controlling government, not government controlling the people. Other groups, Catalysts out of Marin County, up in Northern California, Livable California, United Neighbors United Neighbors, which is out of Sherman Oaks, California Citizens for Local Control, which is out of Torrance. Many nonpartisan organizations are trying to push back on what the state is mandating to us right now, and it's hurting us. It is hurting us. The impacts are tremendous. So I hope people that are watching this, listening to this, will go online and find out what these different organizations are doing to help out and jump in and help. Doesn't matter what political party you belong to. This is all nonpartisan. It's issue-oriented.
So Linda, you mentioned something about a builder's remedy. Would you like to expound on that? That's an important issue, I think.
It should be an important issue because what it means is if a community, a city, has not complied with the state, that is, building the number of housing that the state has mandated. If a plan has not been put together and has not been approved by the the state housing department, a builder can go in, purchase a piece of land, level it, and change it to a multi-story apartment complex. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but in one of these bills that was passed and signed by the governor, there is no more single-family zoning plots, okay?
Wow.
So that will bring in another problem later on, because if you are looking for a single-family home, the number of homes will be taken off the list. So they'll be farther and fewer between. But back to the builder's remedy question. If a community has not complied with the RHNA numbers or the planning for the future RHNA numbers, a builder can come in, knock down a single-family home, build a multi-story apartment complex on there. In fact, there was a recent article in the Los Angeles Times, I believe, about a builder who proposed an apartment complex, I think it was going to be 6 stories or something, on a single-family lot. And they said no to it. And he came back and said, now it's going to be 8 stories. You can't stop it. If your community has not complied with a housing element plan, a builder can go in there and do this. And it's starting to happen in many areas of the state. I think as we go along and talk about this issue, I think it's important for the general public to understand a quote that I found by Thomas Paine, that it is the duty of every citizen, as far as his abilities extends, to detect and expose delusion and error. There's a lot of errors going on with what's happening with what the state of California legislature is doing to our communities.
Linda, do any of these, are they constitutional?
Once a bill is passed and signed by the governor, it's something that has to be abided by. Yes.
So are the bills that have brought this into motion, they've been already passed?
Already passed and signed by the governor. It was SB 9 and SB 10. Mm-hmm. Now, SB 10 is a bill that was signed and so forth, but if that would allow for multi-unit housing on plots of land that are close to public transportation.
Okay.
So that one's a little bit different.
Okay.
But SB 9 allows for lot splitting.
Oh.
So if you have, if you're in a nice little neighborhood and your neighbor next door sells his home, that buyer comes in and can put 2 duplexes on the same plot of land that a house once was on that looked just like yours. Now, what does that do to a neighborhood?
Wow.
What are the impacts that are happening?
Wow.
And speaking about that, there's a lot of impact that has to be studied, or not, perhaps, in terms of water, traffic, noise, air quality. How are those elements dealt with?
Well, that's an interesting question. That would be something that you would think that they would consider first before doing this. Developers in this state have a free pass right now with these bills. And in fact, if they're trying to say there's not enough housing, it's not about that. It's about not enough affordable housing. I keep saying that because I actually had someone tell me that, well, you must, if you're trying to fight these bills, that you must not be in favor of housing. And that is not true. I am in favor of affordable housing, which is something that's getting further and further away. We're going to become a rental state. People are going to have to rent to live here. And they keep pushing more bills. There's one currently, right now, and it's called SB 423. And I know all of these organizations that I mentioned earlier are fighting this. People are writing letters to their local state senators and assembly people. I wrote a letter to my assemblywoman, who is Kate Sanchez, and thankfully she voted no on this, but the rest of the group is voting yes. What SB 423 will do will be to expand building capabilities along the coast of California. And it will overshadow anything that the Coastal Commission has put in place. So this bill will override the Coastal Commission. And in the fine print, the amount of affordable housing is reduced from 20% to 10%. So now what do you think they're going to build along the coast? Are we going to look like Miami? I mean, where are we going with this?
Wow.
And these are the concerns. But you talked about the impacts. There's environmental impacts to all of this. You would think that a smart person would say, let's look at the infrastructure in these areas before we start mandating. And you said about water and so forth. What about the other services that communities have to engage? Okay, I mean, I saw what the cost of our police were, cost of firemen, the cost for the infrastructure, just keeping the infrastructure up in our communities, taking care of our streets and roads. Well, if you add many more people to your community, the cost of additional service renders is going to keep going up. Who's going to pay for that? If these are unfunded mandates by the state, then the local jurisdictions, the people in those communities, are going to get their taxes increased, or let's say more fees. Well, a fee is another three-letter word for tax.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be happening. It's already happening. I mean, why are companies, major companies, moving out of California? The cost of living is going higher and higher, and it's hurting. It's hurting the people who need to be here, who want to live here. You're right. We've had a drought for how long? Well, how many dams do we have? Where have we been able to capture the water that we have gotten, especially in Northern California? We haven't.
Right.
Okay, so enough water? Well, let's see. Let's recycle the water. Okay, they're doing that, and I believe Orange County has a certain segment of the county that has recycled water. They talked about desal. I participated in there was a group that was doing some desalination in San Francisco Bay. And I had the opportunity to go over to this little lab that was right there on the bay. In fact, it was right near the San Quentin prison. And oh my gosh, you should have seen what was coming out and what was going through all of the equipment that they were using. But out came water that looked just like this.
Wow.
And I did get to taste it, and it was very good. The problem is what to do with all that sludge that comes out. I know environmentalists were very concerned that it was going to upset the ecosystem in the bay. I'm sure that some high-tech person could come up with an idea of what to do with that sludge that came out.
Yes.
But that hasn't happened. In fact, when I was at this little lab on the bay, it was a company that was supposed to be opening up a desal plant in Southern California. Now, I know Carlsbad, I think, is trying to work out something there. They're trying to, I think the Coastal Commission denied a desal plant up in Monterey County, up in Northern California. I'm not sure if anything has changed with that. But we've got to figure out what we're going to do about the water for all this additional housing.
Yes.
But the other thing, too, is what's happening. A lot of insurance companies are heading out of town. Why? Because of where they're putting some of these housing communities. A lot of them are in areas that are more rural. I mean, where I came from, I grew up in San Francisco, okay? So I lived in the city, then moved to the peninsula where I went to suburbia. Well, the whole Bay Area is trying to be urbanized, as in many areas down here in Southern California. They're urbanizing our areas with high-density housing. There's a fire in any one of these complexes. Do you think it's going to stop right there? No, it's going to continue. So a lot of insurance companies are bowing out. A lot of the areas, like wooded areas, where where they are planning housing, beautiful wooded areas. Well, how do people get out of there? What are the roadways? Have they done anything about that? So this long answer to your question about the infrastructure, it's not there to accommodate.
Also, the power grid. We don't have enough available at this time when we have very hot days or very cold days. We haven't even talked about the power grid and how much we'll have to pay for our energy.
Well, again, lots of wonderful ideas with electric cars and all of these other things to go electric. That's fine, but we need to transition into this stuff. We need to put the infrastructure together. I don't know how many solar panels can accommodate all this stuff, but I know a lot of new housing, they are putting the solar panels up and so forth. That's great. Anything to accommodate that. But to say we're going to do this by such and such a date is irresponsible.
Yes.
We've got to change things.
Yes.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if we're going to do any more recalls, we need to recall the entire legislature because they're not listening to the people. And it's time for the people of California to step up to the plate. Many people say, well, what am I going to do? How can I change anything? Getting together in conversation in your community, talk to one another. And again, we've got to cross the aisle here on this. This is an issue that affects whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent, or whatever. And we've got to say, wait a minute, we're in control of you. We put you into office to serve us. And we've got to make that voice loud and clear in order to make any changes whatsoever.
Agreed.
Sorry.
It sounds great.
I mean, but there's so much more to this. And
Yes.
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this further again, because there's a lot of little components to all of this that people need to understand.
Of course. There's so much chaos coming at us in so many directions that we feel it's so important. That's why we want to have this show, to shed light on all these issues, the light of truth. So, Linda, do you think that it'd be important for us to come back next time to talk more about this? I mean, you have just a wealth of information for us, but what do we do about it? I mean, you wrote the letters. I mean, I in our community, we're working hard to have our members write more letters, let their voices be heard.
Yes.
And we intend to do just that.
It needs to happen on the local level as well. And that's where I say if we can sit down and have a conversation with our neighbors and get their points of view, go to your city council members, because city council members, I will tell you right now, feel like they are handcuffed. The state is handcuffed, because if you don't comply, you don't get funding. And I remember several times when I was on the city council, you know, when a city gets revenue, it's through property taxes and funding from sales taxes and gas tax, et cetera. There were several times where the state would say, we're not going to be able to send you the money right now. We're going to have to wait a little while. And there were a couple of propositions that took place when I first got on the council. Actually, it was 2004, was Prop 1A, and Governor Schwarzenegger was in office. And it was about the state using money that would come locally. It was Governor Schwarzenegger that said, well, let's do this. If we have to use some of that money to balance the state budget or for other things on the state level, we'll give it back to you and we'll give you an interest on that. Yeah, well, none of that ever happened.
Really?
So in 2010, I hope I've got my date correct, I was still involved with the League of California Cities. And if you might remember Proposition 22. Proposition 22 was passed by the voters of the state of California because it said to the state, you cannot take any more money that is earmarked for local jurisdictions. They need to get their money on time. Okay? It has to happen. Well, Governor Brown didn't like that. And what he ended up doing a year later, or a year or two later, he eliminated all redevelopment agencies. Now, what do redevelopment agencies do? Not all cities had redevelopment agencies, but most did. In fact, when Jerry Brown was mayor of Oakland, he used redevelopment agency funding to clean up the downtown area of Oakland. Okay, it was a reinvestment. It was to help subsidize for affordable housing and things like that. But he said, give me all your redevelopment agency money because I need to use it for education and whatever else he was going to put in the general budget. So, come a few years later, what are we trying to achieve? Affordable housing. Where's the money coming from? You, the taxpayer. So the reason why I want to save local control, the reason why I want to have people much more informed and educated about the facts of the issues is so that they can take part in either voting these people back in or voting for new leadership. We've got to have leadership that listens to the people. And that's not where it's, think about building a house. We are the foundation. And if the foundation is cracking, we're going to lose. You know, America was built on small communities, and then we had, you know, county government, then state government, federal government. We've got these layers of government to protect who? The people. We, the people, are the ones that are controlling government, not government controlling us. But this is what's happening right now. And we've got to get a handle on it because there are a lot of organizations that are just saying, well, you're doing all this because you're not in favor of housing. And you've got many lobbying groups that are forcing the issue on our legislators. That's not the case. We need to sit down and talk about solutions. I actually, this one person that said to me, oh, you're not in favor of housing, I said, well, wait a minute. Look at all of our strip malls in some of our communities. Why aren't we redeveloping them? Why aren't we making those mixed-use areas? And her comment to me, I won't even tell you the comment I got back. But we need to find solutions. We do have a problem, but together we find solutions. We can't be mandated from the top down. And again, these are unfunded mandates.
So key.
Yes.
We saw during COVID, that was real eye-opening for us to look at mandates.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that during COVID because the governor used his emergency powers during that time to make sure housing was being built. And so he sidestepped CEQA, the CEQA process. And many developments were approved ministerially. And I'd like to really dive into that next time around because it's kind of like, may I rubber stamp this? And that's what it is. It's over-the-counter approval.
So Pat, what do you think? I think we got a lot of information jammed into a small amount of time here.
We sure did, Ro. And you know, we were right in helping and choosing Linda to come and be this topic. I mean, you and I can read about this, but to have it be presented so clearly and expertly.
Right. So next month we are going to bring Linda back, and we're going to talk about the solutions that we have available to us. We've got to gather us. We've got to stand together and really do some changes. But you have to know about what we need to change and how to do it. And today we did the what we need to change, and next month Linda's going to give us the steps and the opportunities for us to get involved and make the changes. So hope you'll be back with us then. Thank you. And
thank you for joining us again. And I want to remind you that you can send your comments or questions to us at lightonamericalw@gmail.com. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Linda, for being here today.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.